morning, all. My name is Shelby Bino, and I'm the Director of Data Use here at the department. We're going to kick off week 4 of the InformTN weekly webinar series now. As you can see on the screen, week 4 is going to focus on the review and submit plan page, as well as reviewing school plans. I'm also going to recap some of the information we've covered in previous weeks, as this is scheduled to be the last installment of this series. With that, let's kick off. As you can see on the screen, this is a quick overview of the agenda. We're going to review some items from last week, specifically the pages we covered last week. We're going to deep dive into the review and submit plan page and reviewing plans. And then we're going to just quickly touch on some additional information before we close for today. So let's start with the review from last week. So last week, we touched on a lot of the components of the tool that are around developing your plan. Those included everything from your Prepare to Plan page. As a reminder, your Prepare to Plan page is where leaders are going to be asked to describe their stakeholder outreach, as well as to dig into their root cause analysis that are underlying those needs that are prioritized. So here you're going to go in, you're going to be reminded of those areas that you had said are going to be your focus areas for this year, and you're going to be asked to speak to what are some of the root causes behind that. We also touched on the Upload Documents page. This is an opportunity to add additional supporting materials. The additional supporting materials are not required for school plan, for district plans. The requirement for schools is for Title I schools to upload their Title I budget. So this is an optional functionality that allows you to upload additional documents if you so desire. Develop plan. This is where we talked about actually creating your goals, your strategies, and your action steps. And then reflect on plan is where we talked about addressing those questions regarding how your plan addresses key areas of focus. So with that, let's actually dive back into the tool. Today's focus is on the review and submit plan page, and then on reviewing school plans. Before we jump into that though, I'm going to quickly give an overview again of the entire tool, just so that you can see how it all comes together into the review and submit plan page. With that, let's open up the tool. As a reminder, when you first come in, you're going to see this overview landing page. The landing page that you see when you first come in includes information on the status of the plan, messages, key calendar dates, and the school plan access. Your Explore data page, as a reminder, this is where all of your data is. It's organized into the dashboard, which provides an overview, as well as 4 additional sections, including climate and access, educators, academic achievement and growth, and college and career readiness. Each of these sections allows you to dig into a particular data set and to think about, for example, for chronic absenteeism, what do my numbers look like overall? How does that vary for different grades? How does that vary for different schools? How does that look differently for different student groups? And then how has that trended over time? There's also some key additional visualizations that allow you to see distributions. For example, what is for my students who go on to post-secondary, what types of post-secondary are they going on to? As well as what are the top types of top institutions that my students are going on to. On the Explore data page, you can capture insights, which allows you to save those key pieces that you want to go back to. So let's say I've dug into my discipline data, and I want to capture this graph because I noticed that I have higher discipline in my late middle school years and my early high school years, as well as throughout high school. As a reminder, I can capture this insight, and that will populate the insight onto my Analyze Needs page. Analyze Needs page then becomes a repository. It has all of the needs that I've captured from that Explore data page in one place. I also can add additional pieces of information by creating an additional need. If I have additional local data that I want to add into this repository to consider, as I'm eventually then moving on to create groups and priorities. So once you have all of your data in here, both including those images you've captured from your Explore data page, as well as the additional data that you've added from your local data, you can then take all that data and organize it into groups, as you see here, around related areas. And then you can say, what are the areas, what are the groups that I want to prioritize and focus on moving the needle on this year. For those, you can prioritize those by clicking the Prioritize button on the bottom here, and you'll notice that it goes from blue to green. If you want to deprioritize, you just click it again, and it goes back to blue. So at this point, you've explored your data, you've figured out what your priorities are. The Prepare to Plan page then is a place to both reflect on who's actually at the table as you're doing your planning, but also to do this root cause analysis. So for those areas that you've prioritized, what are the underlying causes? What are some of the things you've done in the past in terms of strategies that may have contributed to those outcomes in your district? And what are some of the root causes that are in your control that you think are causing the outcomes that you're seeing? Once you've done that, you can also upload additional documents if you have additional documents that are supporting your development of that plan. For example, if you use the 5 Whys protocol to do your root cause analysis, you might consider uploading that into your upload documents as a supporting material to support that root cause analysis. Finally, then you move into your develop plan. Develop plan, this is where you're actually writing those goals, strategies, and action steps. You have your prioritized needs along the right-hand side that remind you of the areas that you said that you wanted to plan around and prioritize. You then would create your goals, strategies, and action steps here. You can import goals from previous years at the district level, which allows you to import those goals or strategies, but then update them to reflect the updated information you have from the data from the most recent year. You also can export your plan into both Word or PDF. You could also pull down a version of the rubric right here if you want to compare or reference as you're creating your plan. So once you create your plan, you then would have to answer a few questions regarding how your plan addresses specific areas. For example, well-rounded education, disciplinary practices, safe and supportive schools. As a reminder, you have 2 ways that you can answer, or you can do a combination of the 2. You can write just in the text box by clicking Add Answer, and you can go ahead and type in and just hit save. You can also tag action steps. So if you've written action steps regarding how your district is actually addressing disciplinary practices, for example, you can tag in those action steps there in order to support your answer and not have to retype in all of that information. Finally now, so at this point you've explored your data, you've identified your needs, you've set priorities, you've developed goal strategies and action steps addressing those priorities, you've reflected on how your plan and made sure that your plan addresses specific key areas. Now you're ready to review and submit. And so that's what we're going to start our focus on today. Review and submit. This is like your confirmation page. And so there's some key pieces of information here that I want to point out. First is that you can see on the side, you have a quick navigation. So if I want to jump, for example, directly to my goals, I can use this navigation on the side to jump to a specific goal or specific strategy or action step. Let's say instead I want to jump to questions, I can see the beginning stem of the question titles, and I can jump specifically to a specific question. You'll also notice that there is both green check marks and exclamation points here. The green check mark conveys the message that that section has all of the required components added in. It is not a quality review, it is just a, do you have everything in every box? Do you have something in every box that you're required to submit? If you have a gray exclamation point like this, that implies that that is not complete, and that you need to go back and add additional information, whether that be making sure your action steps, for example, have benchmark indicators and all of the required components, making sure each of your strategies has at least one action step and each of your goals has at least one strategy, making sure you've answered all of the questions. You'll also notice here that on the specific question, you have even more information. So I might know that I need to go back to look at my reflection questions because it doesn't have a green check mark yet. But I can then scroll through the questions and get an additional flag right here that tells me which question I need to revisit. Similarly, if I'm looking at my goals and action steps, I can see that, for example, I have an incomplete here, and that's because action steps are required and I have not added any action steps at this time. So basically, this page allows you to both see and navigate through and see everything you have included and written across all of the different pages in one place. So it allows you to see what you've written on your Analyze Needs page and your Prepare to Plan page and your Upload Documents, your Develop Plan, and your Reflect On Plan, all in one uniform place. But it also gives you some helpful hints and guidance into where you need to go back to add additional information. A few other things I want to highlight. One is that you'll see this Word and PDF functionality. And if you actually skim over it, it tells you a little description. This allows you, if you want to export those goals, strategies, and action steps to either Word or PDF, you can export it here, as well as on that Develop Plan page. This is just another place you can export it. You can also export the rubric. So if you wanted to pull down the rubric to be able to see how is my plan addressing the components of the rubric, I can export it here and be able to compare it right there. Let's talk about plan submission. So you will not be able to submit your plan. You will not even see the button to submit your plan if all of your sections are not green check marks. So let's go to just an example of a school plan that is all green check marks. So what you'll notice here is that this is in draft. You'll notice, though, that this school plan is in ready status. Your plan has to be in ready status and will automatically flip into ready status once it is ready to be submitted. So if I click on this and I look at their review and submit page, I'll notice that these are all green check marks. What that means is that each of the sections has the required components included. What you'll also notice is that now I have this Submit Plan for Approval button. I will not have this button if I do not have green check marks across all of my sections. I also will only have this button if I am the person who has the correct permissions to submit your plan. So at the district level, plans are submitted by the directors of schools. So only those with that permission, strat, and role will ever see the Submit Plan for Approval button. Similarly, school plans are submitted by principals. So only those particular users will have the Submit Plan for Approval button. Let's see what it actually looks like when I submit. So when I hit Submit, I will get a confirmation just saying, "You sure you want to submit?" I'll hit Submit. And I'll get this confirmation on the side here that my submission was successful. You want to make sure that you see this just to make sure that you did correctly click all the buttons and need to get to Submit. I'll also see that my status here changed, so now I'm in submitted status. And if I go back to my home page, I also see that I'm in submitted status. Once school plans will continue to be reviewed by districts, and district plans will be continued to review by schools. So we wanted to take a few minutes now to just highlight, some differences between the school plans and the district plans, and then quickly show you an overview of how reviewing school plans will look. So as you can see a moment ago, school plans are very, very similar and very parallel in structure to district plans. A few things just for you to know about the differences are, one is that schools in the Explore data page can only see the data for their own school. So they cannot see data for other schools in the district in the way that a district user can see data for multiple schools in the district. Schools inherit goals and strategies from the district. This is the same as it's been in previous years. Schools must write their own action steps, though. They cannot, because they're inheriting from the district, they cannot import from previous years. One big key difference, though, is that they can edit, delete, or add goals and strategies. These, though, are subject to district approval, meaning that because you all are approving their plan, if you do not want them to delete or add or edit a goal or strategy that they inherit from the district, that is an expectation that you can set. And you will get a flag if they have changed it that you can see as you're going through and reviewing their plans. They'll have different questions on the Reflect-On Plan page. This is just to address the fact that their school has different requirements than the district. And they'll continue to be on that slightly different timeline for submission, in which district plans are due in March, but school plans are not due till September. So now let's talk a little bit about what it actually looks like from the district perspective to actually review a plan. So this school, let's say this is one of the schools in your district, they've just submitted their plan. So I'm going to go back to the districts. I can see now this school that I clicked on has submitted their plan, and I have this button to start review. So if I'm a district level user, I can then hit the start review, and this will launch my review process. One thing you'll notice at the top is that you will see a flag in a short text box that tells you if the school has deleted, edited, or added any goals or strategies compared to what they inherited from the district. So this is saying that this school actually did change some of the goals. And so it's a flag in case you want to say, as you're approving and reviewing, whether you feel like that is something you think that the school should or should have not done. As you go through the review process, it looks very similar to the review and submit page, but with a few key pieces of key functionality differences. Similarly, you can use this quick navigation to jump to particular sections. What you'll notice, though, is that there is this little word bubble on the side here. This word bubble on the side here is how I can add comments. So let's say I'm going down and I want to add a comment on this particular section. I can hit that little word button. I can then start typing any feedback that I have. That feedback can be both positive or negative, depending on it. So could I say something like, please add more detail. If I want to highlight that I think that the school needs to make a change, I can click this required changes. And I hit create. And now that feedback is added on the side here, as well as the flag saying that changes are requested. Say I think that the identified team is good. So I've now reviewed both the identified team and the stakeholder involvement. I can say, okay, I don't have any more feedback on this particular section. I can mark this section as complete. You don't have to mark it as complete, but it does help kind of make the page a little bit less long as you're reviewing. Maybe I'm going to now review reflection questions. And I'm skimming through. I might leave feedback on this comment, for example. Submission. Changes required. Create. I can also leave positive feedback and not have any changes required. You'll notice that this one didn't have that red bar. If I want to change any of my feedback, I can just edit it by clicking this little pencil button. I can delete any of my feedback by hitting the little X button, and that will delete that feedback, for example. Let's put it back. Maybe I don't have any other feedback for this section, so I might mark it complete. Maybe those are all the pieces of feedback that I have. I then would hit complete review. On the complete review page, you'll get a summary on the left-hand side of the areas that you have provided feedback on and where you've requested changes. So I can see the 2 sections that I had requested changes for, as well as the 3 pieces of feedback that I gave. Because I have changes requested here, I cannot approve this plan. because I'm basically saying that something needs to change, and therefore I won't even see the approve button because I've already indicated that there's a change that's required. So I can then type in some overall feedback. I can say maybe please feedback, and I can hit request changes. When I hit request changes, it's going to kick that plan back to the school. And so now if I can see that this school 3, their status has changed from submitted to changes required. School 3, demo school 3 now can go in there and they can look at their review and submit page, and they can see the feedback that they received. They can see that I highlighted changes that need to be made to this particular question, and they can see each of the pieces of feedback that I provided. They then can make changes, make edits, and they can resubmit their plan. Let's say they decide they want to edit their reflect on plan page, suggest this comment, go to review and submit, and then they can hit submit again. And that would submit the plan back to the reviewer. And so this cycle can continue going on until that plan is approved. So again, you see the submitted and start review. Let's say this time though, I think they've actually got it. They've made all the changes I'm expecting. I can see this box at the top highlights where they've changed, which sections they've changed. And you can see that my change has been updated. I can click that this change, it was made. And I can choose to complete the review again. Let's say, though, that this time, let's say they made changes in both of the sections, and I actually don't think there's any more changes that are required. I think this plan is great. It's totally ready to be done. I can mark all the sections completed. Again, this is optional. But then I can hit my complete review. You'll notice a difference is that I have an approved plan button now. That's because I have no more changes that I've said are requested of the school plan. And so now I can go ahead and approve it. Approve plan. And you can see that the status updated to approved. That's kind of how the reviewing is going to work. And it'll be very similar when CORE is reviewing your plan. So just to review, once your plan goes into ready status, those with permissions in your district or school can actually submit that plan. It'll be reviewed by the CORE offices if you're a district plan, or the district offices if you're a school plan. They'll be able to go in, add those comments, request changes, and send it back to you with those changes. You'll be able to go in and update it. Hopefully you make all the updates, and the district or CORE office can then approve the plan, and then your status will be updated to approved. So this status button on your dashboard is really a great indicator of where we're at this point. And so with that, I want to take a moment now to pause to see if there are any questions that anybody had about reviewing and submitting a plan, approving a plan, providing feedback, or any of the other sections that we've covered. If you do have any questions, please feel free to throw them into the chat. Okay. I see a question actually that will segue us perfectly. The last thing I wanted to cover today was just to review additional resources. So, today is going to be the last webinar of the series, but I really wanted to highlight for you the available resources. So all of the available resources, which are listed below, are available on the department website under the planning page, as well as in ePlan TDOE resources. You can find them in both places. Those resources include the webinars series, so the first 2 installments are currently posted, and the second 2 will be posted in the coming days. It also includes the InformTN user guide. This document provides key information around the content and functionality of the new tool. It includes information, everything from how to access the tool to how to click through the tool. So it's a really great source of information. It's very similar to the information that was covered in the webinars, but just in a slightly different format. And then the last one, which is the newest document, is your Walking Through InformTN document. This document is shorter. It's only about 4 pages, and it provides a shorter version of the guidance around InformTN platform, highlighting key objectives for each page, some guiding questions, as well as some helpful hints. All of these are currently or are in the process of being placed onto both the department website on that planning page under the monitoring planning on planning. They're also all in ePlan TDOE resources. Are there any questions about the resources? If you do have any questions, please feel free to email myself, Shelby Buno, at shelby.buno@tn.gov. One thing I do also want to highlight, just for you all again, is basically a short calendar. I want to reiterate that the district plan submission due date is not changing. It is still March 1st. What will be changing is just that you have access to both the data and will shortly have access to the root cause analysis page earlier. If you decided you wanted to go into that data and start doing some of your planning or start doing some of your root cause analysis, you will have access to that. But just to reiterate, the plan submission due date is not changing. You just have a little bit more time around the data. I want to just open it up one more time to see if there's any remaining questions about anything that we've covered in any of the webinars at all. I'm not seeing any additional questions. If you do have any that come up, again, please feel free to reach out. We really hope and this tool is useful to you all. And so if you do have any questions, please do reach out. If you have any questions or feedback, please also do share those. We really want to continue to grow and continue to improve this tool to make it as functional for you all as possible. So thank you again for your time this morning. And with that, we will end.